Hello and welcome to Scale to Seven Figures and our $1 Million Fireside Chat. I am Lisa Anderson, Strategic Business Advisor, Virtual CFO with a Novel Transformation Solutions and your $1 Million mentor. And I am excited you are joining me. Scale to Seven Figures is an interactive group of small business owners in the business to business, business to corporate, and business to government markets who are ready to scale their businesses to the next level. Our group is an opportunity to share, learn, and grow together without competition. Each week, I bring tips, tactics, and strategies through our $1 Million Masterclasses and our $1 Million Fireside Chats. If you are not familiar with us, head on over to www.scaletosevenfigures.com and check us out. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy our next powerful conversation. Well, good evening, and welcome to Scale to Seven Figures. I'm Lisa Anderson, Strategic Business Advisor and Virtual CFO with a Novel Transformation Solutions and your $1 Million mentor. And welcome. Thank you all for joining us this evening. I am super excited about tonight's conversation. I can't wait to dive in. So this month of August, our theme is Getting Back to Basics, the COVID edition. And we are discussing ways to get back on track and embrace new normals and continue to thrive in uncertain times. Last week, Drs. Kimberly Douglas and Robin Harwick helped us understand the options we have as parentpreneurs, entrepreneurs with children, to navigate the remote schooling landscape while running a business and balancing home, which sometimes can be very difficult. And I know it's been somewhat difficult for some of us over the last several months. But tonight we're going to shift gears just a little bit and explore the landscape of the remote team and how to navigate in this environment long term, and how to be most effective to engage, motivate, and collaborate with the most critical asset. That's what I like to call it, the most critical assets of our business, which is our team. My guest this evening is remote workforce development expert Carolyn Walker, and a longtime client and good friend. And she will be sharing tips, tactics, and strategies to help us thrive as business owners as we navigate this new landscape. So help me welcome Carolyn Walker to the show. Hey, Carolyn.
Hi, Lisa. I am thrilled and delighted to be here and share my thoughts and insights and experiences with your audience. Thank you for having me.
I am excited to have you. I can't wait to dive in. And it's great to see your face. Has been, it's far too long. Yes, far too long. So before we dive in, share with everybody who Carolyn Walker is and tell us a little bit about your business.
Thanks, Lisa. Well, first of all, I'd say I'm thrilled that you just had a sequence focusing on how to be mompreneurs and working at home, because we are all in the mode of how to manage our personal life and our work life. So if you ask me, who is Carolyn Walker? I am part of that sandwich generation. On one side of this sandwich, I have a millennial age daughter whom I fret about. And on the other side of that sandwich, I have a 90-year-old mom whom I manage her healthcare remotely. So I have been juggling and experiencing a lot of the same issues that most of your audience has also. Yeah. So that's who I am personally. Professionally, I would describe myself as a seasoned executive. I started my career in Fortune 50 companies with Xerox and later Digital Equipment Corporation, and sales training, development, later managing P&L for the corporation. So I bring that corporate experience like many entrepreneurs have, and launched my own company in 2002, EP LLC. And we're grounded in instructional systems design. Our focus is on learning and development. So I am passionate about developing professional careers. Most recently, I spun off the TDP Consulting Group, and we're a team of professionals who work with businesses of all sizes to help them develop their most important resource, their staff, and manage this current workforce. And yes, I mean the remote workforce. So that's where my passion and my focus in my work is.
So have you been working with the remote workforce prior to COVID, or is that something that you kind of pivoted into?
Well, that's interesting that you posed that question because, as I said, I started my own business in 2002, and we were based in the DMV area, working primarily on federal contracts. And I would say it's been almost 10 years now, I made the decision to move our company to a remote workforce. So this environment is not new for me as a manager. And I've got a lot of lessons learned on making that pivot and that transition. So um, I'm fortunate in that I did not have to pivot and adjust due to COVID-19. I had the opportunity to apply years of lessons learned to this environment that many businesses are currently finding themselves in.
Yeah, I like to share, well, I do share all the time that one of our $1 million propositions was, when we hit the $1 million mark was when we actually took the business virtual
Mhm.
many years ago. But virtual for us meant working virtually within our office for companies that were across the city, across the state, across the country, and then ultimately internationally. So switching over to COVID, we were already somewhat virtual, but we were not remote. So it took us a little bit to get ready for that.
Yeah. Well, it's good you had to step up. It wasn't starting from scratch and
Yeah.
you weren't in a reaction mode. Like a lot of businesses found themselves having to react quickly without a plan or experience. And that's a scary proposition.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, virtual is becoming that new reality, right?
It is the new reality. And I think it's not only the reality of today, but it's definitely the reality of the future.
Yeah.
Um, with the companies that I've worked with and with colleagues, I don't think we're going to go back to the old days of businesses just being based in brick and mortar.
Yeah.
Um, out of crisis often breeds innovation. And
Absolutely.
a lot of businesses across industries are finding that they're not going to bring 100% of their workforce back. That's just not going to happen. They're taking advantage of the benefits of a remote workforce and applying that and building it into their long-term plans.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's certainly something that we're thinking about whether or not we're going to go back into brick and mortar. It was one thing, as we were talking just before we came on the show this evening, is one thing to be in a space that was private in our own to
Mhm.
now, operating out of a space that has, a lot of public activities. And I don't know. I don't know that right now I don't feel comfortable. But even beyond comfort, we're stepping into this normal. We're embracing it. We're extremely productive, uh, probably too productive because the days seem to be a lot longer than they did before. But I haven't had any challenges with it. So
Excellent. That's excellent. Well,
yeah,
that's unique. Um, I think as people adapt to this new environment,
yeah,
I think you definitely have a leg up in that you started um, virtual work or remote work. Wasn't all new to you,
yeah,
but for those who are making that jump from 100% brick and mortar to suddenly having to figure it out as they go along in a remote workforce, it's been it they companies have had some challenges. in
Yeah.
doing.
So can you talk about what some of those challenges have been? I'm curious to know what some of the businesses are facing and what they're thinking through or having to manage through in this season.
Well, I think for those who have had no experience with remote workforce, I think their first biggest challenge was having the tools and the technology to do it effectively.
Mm.
They learned that just because someone takes home a laptop does not mean they have
Mhm.
everything they need to be effective and productive in their jobs. So companies have had to step back and say, in order for me to be successful, in order for me to even continue to function, I'm going to have to invest in making sure that my staff has the right tools and the tools that they need.
Yeah.
Um, the second challenge really is the difficult one, and that is the mindset challenge.
Mm.
Managers have been accustomed to using what I call old school tools to
Yeah.
manage staff, and that tends to revolve around some version of punching a time clock.
Right. Hmm.
And
Hmm.
I understand how that happens, especially when you have a lot of government contracts. You're required to document the hours of your workers, and so your mind defaults to how do I create a virtual time clock for my workforce? And that is the most important mindset that has to change in order to be successful and not only survive in a remote work environment, but actually to thrive. So, to get the management mindset away from the old school time clock to measuring productivity based on results and develop trust in your uh, staff to say, I trust you. I know what needs to be done. I trust you to get it done and to set those types of management boundaries and goals for staff.
Yeah. Is it also, do you also find that as it relates to time, it's not just necessarily the documentation of the work time, but maybe the flexibility um, of the actual hours, no longer 9 to 5, maybe?
Uh, yes, and I often share this story. One of my most valued employees, who has been with me since the start of TDP and is still with me now, is a very creative professional, and his peak productivity hours are between 9 p.m. and 3 a.m. I know this about him. That's just the way his mind works. He has a lot of personal reasons why those are his hours of
Yeah.
productivity. I get emails from him, and when I open my email in the morning, because I'm a morning person, so I'm checking my emails like 5:36. I see deliverables from him that he has posted at 3 o'clock in the morning. And as his manager, I make sure I never call him or touch bases with him for an 8:30 or 9 o'clock or sometimes even a 10 o'clock call
Yeah.
because I know that's not his peak time for productivity, and I have to respect the fact that he gets done what needs to get done, and he's not a 9 to 5er.
Yeah. So how do you manage that? Um, I mean, I get it. I'm a morning person.
Mhm.
And around 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I start to take a dive, right? So I'd rather start at 4
Mhm.
and just crank it out in the quiet moments and then spend some certain periods of time during the day. But when everybody else on your team, everybody has their different zone of genius, right? There's
Yeah,
different time zones.
I like
How do you manage that?
I'm gonna capture that. Well, I think first of all, it depends on what the role of each individual person is. If you have someone on your team who's responsible to for customer interface during certain business hours, then yes, they have to be available and responding.
Yeah.
If you have someone who is, you know, producing a deliverable that's not related to the customer interface, during that regular business hours, then I think as a manager, you have two things that you have to do. First of all, you have to really know and understand how much time and what is required for that individual to complete that task.
Yeah.
Because if you have no clue of what it really takes to do the job, you can't hold them accountable in a realistic way.
Right.
And the second thing is you have to develop a level of trust that if I've given clear and specific goals on what needs to be accomplished and when it's due, that I can step away and that person can meet those expectations in a reasonable way.
Yeah. So a couple of things. My pastor always preaches on this, but to inspect what you expect. But first you have to communicate the expectation, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So just making certain that you have the appropriate tools or processes in place. Like for us, it's the Monday morning tag up, just to make certain that we're all on the same page. But when you're remote, sometimes some of these things are a little bit difficult to adjust to. What types of things, how are you coaching clients to make that shift from what I call control to engagement and collaboration?
Yeah. Well, I think the first thing is you have to have a plan. Don't just do things and then react to whatever happens.
Right.
And in order to have a good plan, you have to know your organization. Some organizations are very high touch. They're accustomed to meeting in the break room in the morning for coffee, getting together for lunch. They're accustomed to having frequent face-to-face communications.
Right.
And if you know that's your team, then you have to have a communication plan that builds that in and accounts for that. For an example, if you know that your team acknowledges both personal and professional milestones with cakes and cupcakes and whatever, do that on a Zoom call. Plan those. Have a communication plan where if you know it's a personal milestone for someone, it's a birthday for someone, plan that and communicate that in advance and have fun with it. If it means putting a party hat on and having cupcakes delivered to someone's home to celebrate together, do that. And on the flip side of that, if you know that you've got a group of professionals that operate independently, they're very independent workers, don't create false check-ins. Don't have a plan that says every day at 10:30, you must be on this call, blah, 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 blah. I mean, use that same common sense business logic that you were in the office together that says don't have a meeting for meeting's sake.
Yeah.
And don't fall into the trappings of because everybody is remote, the only way I can make sure they're working is if we have a meeting.
Yeah. I have a friend that he's a VP at one of the telecommunication organizations who I won't name, but he talks about that. He's like, they want us to have meetings. It's like 3 meetings a day. I wasn't doing 3 meetings a day when we were, physically in location. But I think a lot of that has to do with, like you said, that mindset and being able to let go. I mean, people are working. If you let them work.
Yes. And that's a perfect example of an organization, A, that hasn't made the mind shift from the old school punch the clock to managers who are very insecure about how they can manage their people. And a lot of times that insecurity is based out of A, they really don't know what their team is doing. They don't know what's required to complete a deliverable or to complete a task. Maybe they knew a while ago, but they don't really know now. So they're insecure, and the only way to calm that insecurity is to have these kinds of check-ins. So as managers, not only do you have to know how to do your job, but you better know what's required for your direct reports to complete their job tasks. If you know that, then you don't go to that default of, I got to see you to know you're working.
Yeah.
You can say, I know it's going to take you 3 days to accomplish this task. Just ping me with appropriate milestones. I'm going to leave you alone, get the work done.
Yeah. How are you recommending companies manage customer service in this environment? And I'm going to share with you where I'm coming from with that question.
Okay.
Zoom has been the greatest tool ever since March the 10th, 11th. But it's been the worst tool ever. I spend literally so I've gotten to the point where I have to block time. I have to block it off. I can't do certain things because if I allow my calendar to be open to Zoom meetings all day, then I will not be productive, and neither will my team. And so deliverables would then be pushed out, and we don't want that. So I had to build some discipline, some different disciplines around, how we manage our workday. But it's been difficult. It's been really, everybody wants to get on a Zoom call. Everybody.
Yeah. And that defaults back to having meetings for meeting's sake.
Yeah.
Really have to evaluate what is the purpose of this time we're spending on Zoom. Yeah. Is it something that can be handled with an email? What's going on with the climate that you're kind of insecure and have to see my face to feel comfortable that we're being responsive?
Yeah.
It's a mindset. But what you said, I think, is key. You do have to block time aside, that this is the time that I'm available for this type of activity. And outside of that window, I'm working on being productive.
Yeah.
With my deliverables.
Yeah. When we went completely virtual, so let's see, we were completely virtual when we were working with you, right?
Yes.
So we were completely virtual then. But a few years when we really started to ramp up and bring more staff on board, we had to actually sit down and have conversations with the team about, yes, we need to be responsive. We need to be available. We need to be accessible, but we can't be crazy about it because we have to, have a block of time where we actually get the work done. So I gave them permission. To do a couple of things. During certain times of the day, allow the phone to go to voicemail. If you answer every single phone call, you won't be able to get the work done. So you've got to allow it to go to voicemail. And then, like you said, asking the question and then responding to urgent things first, and then following up at a certain time of day for those things that are not necessarily urgent. It took my team a while to get into the flow of that because we'd been taught for so long in the work environment that you got to answer the phone right away. The customer first. You have to be, instantly available to answer the call. No, you don't. You use the great word, which is responsive. Responsive doesn't mean that you pick up the phone right away. It means you answer the question. at
Yes.
some point.
Absolutely. And it does not mean with an immediate phone call. No, there is a saying that goes back. We teach people how to treat us.
Yes.
And if you train your clients that every time they dial your number, it's going to be an instant this, then you set that expectation and
Yeah.
you set yourself up for that.
Yep.
However, if you set parameters that say, yes, I'm going to be responsive, but responsive in a reasonable time, then you free yourself to do a better job.
Yeah, absolutely. The end result is always great.
Yes.
Always great.
Yeah.
Awesome. So, on the other side of the spectrum, so you talk about connecting with the team, putting, making certain that you build certain things, and if you knowing how your team thrives, if they thrive with interaction, then building that into the process of connecting with them, build it into your intention, right? Your strategy, your
And
process.
having a communication strategy and a
Mhm.
communication plan, just like you plan everything else. Have a plan. Know your organization, know your staff, know yourself, and create
Mhm.
a plan that fits that.
Yeah, I love that. So some organizations are concerned with the distance working, that they don't have the true opportunity to see what's going on with their workforce. So Zoom is great. You can see one another face to face, but as soon as you turn the screen off and walk away, then you have a block of time, a huge block of time where you just don't really know how connected the individual is. And I've had some companies who've lost staff during this period of time, and they weren't necessarily looking. It was just that they didn't feel fulfilled in the remote work environment. Have you come across that challenge? And if so, what types of things are companies doing to combat that?
Well, I have had people, when we made our decision to go 100% virtual, I did have people who come to me and said, look, my social life, work is my social life. It's not
Mm,
my work life. I need that connection. Um, so some of those people, to be quite candid, did not make the adjustment.
yeah.
They were looking for work to fulfill more than just their professional life. They were looking for work to fill their personal life. And quite
Mm,
frankly, work can only do so much of that.
yeah.
And we have our work friends, but if that's all you got and you go virtual, you are going to be one of those people who suffers. So it's not going to, everyone is not going to thrive in that environment. But I
Yeah.
would say that's a rarity and an anomaly. Um, Most of the folks who have come to me and expressed concern, or I've seen companies say, well, I don't know. We are a high touch organization. We are accustomed to a lot of that face to face. With thoughtful plans and activities, that need has been met. I think one of the benefits of a virtual work environment is that you can bring a lot of those activities in at a fairly low cost that can be professional learning and development opportunities that you
Mhm.
can offer to a remote workforce that might have cost quite a bit in the past. Now you can do it in a very cost effective way. I don't know, does that answer your
Yeah,
question?
it does. It does. I mean, again, it goes back to the intention and knowing who's out there. And I think some of it is also following your gut, because if you know your people, you kind of get a gut feeling when somebody may be drifting, right? It's not necessarily I'm concerned about me drifting. I'm concerned about the workforce, those that work for us, that we've been really well engaged prior, but now, we're having to change that. And like you said, they're working in spaces where they don't have that day-to-day interaction. The interaction comes through the Zoom call, or it may be somebody popping into the kitchen for a quick second, but it's not what it used to be. And so they start to look for other things. But like you said, you have to follow, you have to put that plan in place. You have to be intentional about it.
Yes,
And I think you have to follow your gut.
you do. You really do. Um, I have seen so many um, new opportunities that companies have been able to take advantage of that they wouldn't if they were in their traditional brick and mortar environment. Um, I've done new things. This is new. I've done interviews before, but they've been in, a traditional studio. So there
Mhm.
are lots of opportunities to learn and grow and stretch if you're willing to put yourself out there and if you're willing to create those opportunities for your staff.
Sure. So communication plan,
Yes.
time flexibility, um, managing customer service in a new environment. What other tips do you have for business owners to help them adapt in this environment?
Well, I think that in order to do those things successfully and to thrive, it really is based on being able to establish trust.
Yeah.
Um, and if you establish trust with your employees, you're spending time, you're getting to know them, um, and don't take everything too seriously. There are things that happen in a remote environment that just happen. For an example, some of you might be hearing my little dog barking in the background. Don't take it too seriously. Don't let it throw you off. It's going to happen to everybody.
Yep.
Um, so take it in stride and keep moving forward. And now I've lost track of my thoughts. So pose that question to me one more time.
Your dog was right on time. We planned that.
Thank you.
No, I was just asking you what additional strategies or tips did you have for just adjusting and really gearing the team up to be most effective and productive in this remote environment.
Well, the other point that I would make is that companies are finding cost savings in remote environments. And I think what I would hope that managers and companies do is take advantage of that cost savings and reinvest it in your most important asset, and that is your staff.
Yeah.
There are all kinds of opportunities for personal and professional development that you can tap into using Zoom and other tools that you may not have been able to take advantage of in the past. So I would say take advantage of that. That will certainly help you attract and retain your staff. The other important thing I would hope that businesses do is as you get comfortable in a remote workforce, look at the fact that it also opens up the opportunity for you to tap into resources not based on geography, but based on what you need to move your business. If you've got a successful remote workforce going in your geography, guess what? You can bring somebody from the West Coast. You can tap into talent from overseas if that's what you want to do. So it really is an opportunity for you to broaden your scope and not only your employees and your staff, but also in your clientele, your client base.
Yeah, absolutely. $1 million propositions right there. So, Carolyn, I think you touched on this earlier, but I just want to get your opinion. How long do you think we're going to be in this remote environment? Is this just through COVID, or do you see it'll last a little bit longer?
We are not going back.
Mm-hmm.
We are not going back to business as it used to be. I've spoken with clients who are in the hospitality industry, across industries. Businesses are learning that there are advantages to a virtual workforce. A lot of businesses are evaluating, um, does my workforce have to be 100% employees? Can some of it be contract work? Um, but the bulk of businesses are seeing the cost savings over the traditional brick and mortar, and they're applying those monies to developing their businesses and developing their staffs, and we are not going back.
Yeah.
The other reality is today it's COVID-19, tomorrow it's going to be something else.
Something else. Yep.
So if you have not figured out how to not only survive, but thrive in this environment, you're going to be left behind because business is not going back.
Yeah.
And that's across industries.
It seems like we've heard it a lot, but technology is driving these drastic changes. I mean, technology certainly changes quickly and it changes over time. And we've been experiencing different changes throughout, the last 20 years or so. But there are moments when there's huge changes that happen that then cause us to make this shift. And what I say it's the pruning of the tree, right? Trees can't grow, they can't thrive unless you start to prune. And so you got to shake the tree to get, to release the dead or complacent limbs.
And there's a reason why they call it growing pains. If you're comfortable in the rhythm of your business, you're not growing, you're about to be left behind.
Yep.
So it's important to get out of the comfort zone. Crisis breeds innovation. But one thing I will also underscore that's also very important, I don't think I said this before, is you can have the greatest technology, you can invest in the best software, but if your users don't know how to use it and they can't effectively adapt and adopt those technologies, you've wasted your money.
Yep.
And coupled with that, you can be the best subject matter expert. But if you're fumbling with your technology and you can't present well, you're not demonstrating your expertise.
Yeah.
So yes, invest in the tools, but what's equally important is invest in making sure your staff is comfortable using those tools.
Absolutely. That's what it means to be productive and efficient.
Yes.
Right? Efficiency doesn't mean that you just go out there. I've been working with a company recently, and they made a transition from an accounting system, really simple, off the shelf accounting system, working just fine, but they moved to a much more complex, customized system. And great system. Offers a lot of great tools, just, it creates some efficiency. But when they made the switch, I said, you're going to need to hire, or you're going to need to train and hire individuals who can manage this. And now they're struggling because they didn't do it. They didn't do it. Yeah. So
sometimes that's a hard sell, because people think, oh, I got it. I bought the equipment. I've got the software. I'm ready to roll. But if nobody knows how to use it and they're afraid of it.
Yep. That's the key. If they're afraid of it.
Yes.
Absolutely. Wow. Well, this was good conversation. Good to see you and hear you and to take this deep dive. You gave some really great tips.
Well, thank you. I enjoyed it, and I hope somebody can take away at least a couple of nuggets to apply tomorrow, because that is my passion. Everybody has their calling in business, and this is my calling. So I thank you for the opportunity to share.
Well, I think there were a lot of good nuggets that were taken away this evening, because I do have one of the 4 different chats up, and there's a lot of conversation going on in the chat right now.
Great.
Yes. So this was good and timely. Certainly because we're having to prepare for, this. Usually when school starts up, it's time to get back to business. Everybody's off of vacation. It's time to get back into that business mindset. The government is, at the end of its fiscal year, planning for the next year. So it's always a good time to try to get back on track. And now we're having to get back on track in a whole different manner.
Yes.
Yeah. Excellent.
And it's a good track to be on. It's a good track to be on.
Yeah.
Once people get on it, get comfortable in it, they will not only be surviving, they will be thriving. They will see those new opportunities. So grasp it.
That's right. Let's go. Let's go. And you said crisis breeds innovation, right?
Yes,
So
it does. It does. It absolutely does.
that's what business is all about. You have to be innovative so that you can solve the problems of your customers.
Mhm.
Problems don't stay the same, although sometimes fundamentally what happens underneath is pretty, consistent, right? But how they approach them, how they realize them, how they materialize, they're all different, and so you need innovation to tackle it.
Yeah. You must have it. You must have it. And I will also, I'll say, if you are in a place in your business and you're feeling comfortable, you're in trouble.
Yep.
That's a sign that you're in trouble.
Yep.
So try something new.
I say the worst thing that can be given to a CEO is a desk. Worst thing. So, awesome. Well, any last tips before we wrap up?
I think just to say, embrace the change. Don't be afraid of what you don't know. And put yourself out there, ask the questions, and spend that time with your staff to have a good understanding of what they need. As a manager, your role and responsibility is to provide the resources and the environment for the success of your staff.
Yes.
And you won't know what that looks like unless you ask.
Absolutely. Well, this is great. I love it. Thank you so much, Carolyn. I really do appreciate you joining us this evening. And if you can share with everybody the best way for them to learn a little bit more about you and to learn a little bit more about TDP.
Thank you for that. Yes. Please go to our website, and it's tdpconsultinggroup.com, all spelled out. And we do have a section on the website that focuses specifically on COVID-19. And you can also email me directly, Carolyn at tdpconsultinggroup.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, my friend. It's good to see your face, hear your voice.
Good to see you, and much continued success. I don't have to say it because I know you're an innovator and I know you adapt to change. So
I try. I tried. So thank you. And I look forward to catching up again soon.
Absolutely. Be well, be safe.
You too.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Well, there you have it. We've been kind of saying it all month long, but preparing to step into this new normal. These things are not going away. This is going to be here forever. This is going to be our commonplace. And so in order for us to be effective, productive, and manage our teams most effectively, we need to be in a place of intention. Establishing our communication plans, trusting the process. I wrote an article about that this past weekend on trusting the process. You've got to trust the process, and then you got to be flexible. So hopefully you all gained a lot of good tips this evening on how to operate in this virtual environment and to keep your teams at peak performance. by just checking in, by trusting, and then again, having that communication plan. So we are going to continue this conversation next week about agility and getting back on track during the COVID pandemic. We're going to continue that next week with Ebony Smith. She is a leadership thought partner and strategist. And we're going to talk about workforce training. We're going to talk about how to get your minds as a business owner, your bodies and your spirits right while stepping into this new normal, because that's important. We heard Carolyn say that half the battle is mindset and changing the way that you think and the way that you react to certain situations. Ebony is also going to share why it is important to embrace discomfort, why it's important to embrace discomfort in order to move forward in this period of time. So tune in live next Wednesday at 6:30 p.m. for that powerful conversation. And again, thank you all for joining me this evening. And in closing, I am Lisa Anderson, Strategic Business Advisor and Virtual CFO with Novel Transformation Solutions, your $1 million mentor. And I look forward to seeing you all again next week. Thank you.